Welcome, adventurers, to the podcast that goes through everything gaming. Wherever you're listening in, get ready to shuffle those cards, roll the dice, and count your victory points, because this is PlayUp and Chat.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of PlayUp and Chat. This is Don Chap.
And this is me, Benji, and thank you for tuning in to another wonderful episode. Today we're going to change things up a little bit from what we've been discussing in the past episodes, and that is today we're going to start some board game reviews. Isn't that right, Don?
That's right. After 10 episodes of being very general and going over certain topics, we go over, the different formats, different board game styles. This time we're going to go and narrow it down to each and every board game that we played or owned.
Yeah, definitely. An interesting little piece of knowledge, an interesting fact, a little factoid.
FF.
Yes.
Fun fact.
We decided that the order in which we're going to do these board games is somewhat personal in the sense that we're going to go through the list of board games as we bought them.
Yeah, so in this episode, we're going to go with the first board game that I bought, which happens to be Spartacus, Blood and Treachery.
Wonderful. Before we step into introducing Spartacus, Blood and Treachery and our new, quite interesting system of a rating, let's say, we would like to mention a couple of new Patreons that we have.
Don't forget, guys, if you like what we do, you can go ahead and support us through patreon.com/playupmt. And to this episode, we dedicate it to
Daniel Healy.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, great. We love the support. Thank you, Daniel, for coming on board.
So
this is always shaky, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Shall we do it again?
It's about a week since.
Yes, they're weekly.
Record.
Okay, so let's jump in. Let's dive right in to Spartacus, Blood and Treachery.
This is done. This is published by Gale Force 9, and this is designed by Sean Swigart and Aaron Dill, right?
Yeah, Aaron Dill. The original concept and design was come up with John Kowaleski, and as everybody, if you're not familiar with the series, this board game is based off of the Spartacus hit TV series.
Yeah, which initially was done by Stars. You can find it on Netflix if you want. It's not kid-friendly, guys, so make sure that, you are over 16 at the very least to watch it. Otherwise, PG, and just fast forward the naughty bits.
Yes. A little disclaimer over there. But an interesting, really awesome game that we have here today. Before we jump into a little review and rating, let's go over how the game is played. We'll have a little bit of the look into the rules, and we will just go maybe even look at the turn summary a little bit, turn by turn, see what players actually do within the game. So Don, would you like to start us off with the rules for Spartacus?
Yes. So basically the way it is, if it's the first time you are playing this game and is the first time owning it, it's very important you open the box and
open the box? Yeah, you gotta
open the box. No, okay, so let's go
open the box, unpack the game, make sure all the little cards are, placed nice and neat out of their little plastic packaging in the little baggies,
Take a good sniff from the box.
The new board game smell. Oh, yes. That's all. I love that. New board game smell. Sometimes it's what you live for as a board game collector, right?
Not all of them have a nice smell, especially some of the heavy ink printed ones. I know some board games don't smell as good as I wanted them to. The first time it's like, oh my god, no, not that one, not that smell. I wanted the other smell.
Well, we can remember from your experience that when you opened up this board game, how old were you when you got this game?
I was 22.
Yeah, you can just imagine 22-year-old you opening up this board game, giving it a nice.
This one smells nice.
New board game smell.
Yes,
oh yeah,
this one smells nice. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a sealed print anywhere unless a game shop hasn't managed to sell it off its shelf. They're coming out with the second edition, and it's nothing like the first edition. The printing, the way the designs of the rules are and all that is very different. I prefer the copy that I have because I'm a big fan of the show.
Actually, it's one of our points. In fact, that a lot of the design of the game, this particular version has got a lot of screenshots and pictures taken from the TV series. Now, this box, when you open up this box and you bring out everything like we just said, you're gonna find a rule book. You're gonna find a market deck, an intrigue deck. You're gonna find house cards. A whole bunch of tokens. There are a lot of tokens. There are quite a lot of dice as well that you'll find. You got really awesome miniature gladiator figures. Now, these don't come painted, but for all those enthusiasts out there, you can really go to town and paint these guys and they would look awesome in the arena. And obviously, you're going to find the game board.
Exactly. So then you are going to go through the rule book. You're going to kind of get hold of how the game is played and so on and so forth. The game is played for 3 to 4 players from the original box. There are expansions to increase number of players if you so wish. However, I think the board game within itself is good enough to cater for a number of 4 players. I think more than 4 players it starts to become quite taxing, especially for time. The rules goes like this. The turn is split up into 4 different categories, phases, so to speak. You have the upkeep phase, the intrigue phase, the market phase, and the arena phase. Upkeep, in this case, it would be you refresh your cards. So basically, you flip any uninjured or exhausted cards back face up, and there's a way how to do this. You heal the injuries. If any of your gladiators have injuries, you make the rolls accordingly. And balance the ledgers. So basically, the way it works is gladiators cost you money and slaves earn you money. So basically, you're just going to balance out the ledger. If you have enough slaves, you end up, with profit. If you have more gladiators than slaves, unfortunately, you're going to have to fork out a bit from your own pocket if you do. Unless you have to discard a gladiator because you're not financially stable to support that gladiator.
Yeah, if you can't afford the gladiator, he's not going to be fighting for you, that's for sure. After the upkeep, we have the intrigue phase. And in the intrigue phase, players will all draw 3 cards. Intrigue usually starts with the host. So it would start from the host of the gladiator games from the previous round, right? And players take turns, playing schemes, playing cards from their hand. A lot of these cards have different abilities. Some may grant you intrigue. Some may allow you to interact with other players and gain either some tokens or some ways in which might benefit you throughout the round. Perhaps some coin, perhaps some money. The way that playing a lot of these cards works is if you have an appropriate influence level. So at times you might find that to play a card you need a higher level of influence, and if you don't, and then you can team up with other cards and you can discuss with your other players and with perhaps opponents that maybe have been in the arena before but now turned allies. And it's a great way to increase the strategy over here and build allies and maybe even turn some into enemies. And yeah, it's a great asset to go through these cards because it helps you build up the game.
I feel that the intrigue phase is the part where people feel where they're going to make allies or they're going to start making enemies, because intrigue cards essentially start messing around with players. You either benefit from things from them or you start messing with players to hinder them, either dropping down their influence, taking gold off their table, injuring their gladiators. There's all of these schemes that are played during this period. Of course, during the intrigue phase as well, there is the house special rule. So basically, your character in front of you that you're representing has a house rule that gives you benefits. Like, for example, if you discard 3 guards, you go up in influence. If you exhaust 5 guards, you get to draw an extra card this turn. There are all these different house rules. Each house rule is independent from another, and it's only able to be played during the intrigue phase unless stated otherwise. I know that the main game, all of them have just an intrigue phase rule, The expansions do come up with some additional rules, triggered from other players. I think Sepius is the one that everyone goes after because he just gives you 1 gold every time someone reaps gold from the bank.
Oh yeah, definitely. Sepius is a good one because of that, the gold, and in fact it's some players might have to cash in cards in the intrigue phase just to put up their money rather than using them, trade them in for gold, because gold comes in very important in the next phase,
which is the market phase. This is where basically you have an open market first. So we go over the table again. Who wants to sell items? You can sell directly to a player if they're interested and you haggle the price. Alternatively, if you don't want to sell to that player, you can just sell directly to the bank and you just get the gold value that's written on the card. A lot of people try to haggle the price to get more than what's written on the card. So if you know that one of the players really likes guards and you're just overflowing with guards and you just can get rid of a couple, you kind of make a good deal. If the card is 2 gold from the bank, you want to get 3 instead. So there's all this haggling. Then it moves on to my favorite part, which is the auction. The auction is basically you draw out cards equal to the number of players face down, and you start revealing cards one by one. As you reveal a card, everyone puts money in their hand and they bid for it. And this is going to create the element of, do I want it? Do I save up for something that's going to come out good? And obviously, like, for example, my partner really likes to save up for slaves.
Yeah, saving up for slaves is a very good tactic because, as we mentioned, slaves do earn you money in the long run during the upkeep, So that is a great tactic to have. But also, I really love the auction because it brings in an element of, forward thinking and strategy, as you mentioned, Don, because you really don't want to spend all your money on the auction part where you're getting items or slaves or whatever, because after the auction comes bidding for hosting, and hosting is when you host the games and then host the gladiatorial games. So being the host has a lot of perks in and of itself. You gain influence. It also lets you go, it lets you start in the intrigue phase as well and the other rounds afterwards. But, people go crazy bidding for hosts. And so really the person with the most money, so the person who really thinks, okay, slaves get me money, let's pile up on slaves, let's get loads of money, let's not spend a lot in the auction, let's become the host, because it's a really good strategy.
The host has a certain power in the game, let's put it like that, simply because you are first player next time the upkeep comes around, so everything starts with you. Also, you have an element of control. When we say hosting the games, it is literally you're inviting 2 players to battle each other, and you can be a really nasty host because you can grab a person with a very strong gladiator and someone with a very weak gladiator up against each other, which the odds will definitely favor the one with the stronger gladiator, although I've seen a couple of crazy moments where the dice is not in the favor of that person.
Oh yeah, the dice doth giveth and the dice doth take it away sometimes, and it's really crazy because you've got such a really good gladiator on the board and in the arena, and then you roll the dice and boom, nothing really happens, and then the other player gets extremely lucky and rolls 5s and 6s almost constantly, and it's really exciting.
So when we're saying, like, how is this so important in the game? Well, the next phase is the arena phase.
And in the arena phase, to honor the host, as we mentioned, the host gains 1 influence. But then they bring in the gladiators. They choose 2 other players. They bring in the gladiators. Sometimes might also be slaves as well, depending on what the player has in front of them. And then, before the gladiator event starts and the gladiators go into arena and start hacking and slashing and trying to kill off each other, we place wagers, little bets. So who do we think is going to win? Is it going to be player on the left? Is it going to be player on the right? Are they going to win by decapitation? Is there just going to be an injury? These kind of things are things that we bet on, and in return, and then you can get money. So players who perhaps have not made it into the arena still have sort of some means or ways of getting something out of that fight.
Yeah, the only part in this rule is once wagers are placed, right? So you're either going to bet on player 1 or player 2 who's going to win. Limit is up to 3, makes sense. Otherwise, you're gonna empty the bank if this is broken, thanks to the host choosing a very broken pair. However, I think the only thing that I don't agree with is the fact that the injury part, your outcome is 1:2, meaning that basically if you do win, you get triple the amount that actually went in for the bid. So if you bet 3 in, you get 9 back. I would have changed that a bit because injury in certain situations is inevitable.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there are even with the way the dice roll, injuries are quite often. Actually, we see them quite often around, and decapitations are not so common.
No, you have to really have like a really strong gladiator on the field, something like Theocles, or there is a couple of 2 others I think that are like extremely overpowered. Once they're out there in the market, everyone starts bidding for them immediately because they're so powerful.
Yeah, and some gladiators even have special abilities that when defeating an opponent might cause an automatic injury or might cause an automatic decapitation, and these are different abilities on said overpowered gladiators. But yeah, the way combat works is each gladiator has a set of skills, and with these skills you roll a number of dice. There are attack dice and there are evade dice. When the opponent is attacking, they'll roll the attack dice, and then you have to roll the evade dice, and according to what you get and then which value is bigger than the other, takes out the dice for the next roll. So, and then you're left rolling less dice by the end of the arena, and the one who kills off the other person is essentially, kills in inverted commas, because unless there is a decapitation, they're not killed. But if they go down to, is it 1 dice each section?
So the rolling is you have in blue, red, black. Blue is initiative, red is attack, black is defense. If your gladiator ends up 1 of each, basically he's yielding, meaning that he's exhausted, he can't fight anymore, the game's over, the other player won. You have injury, which basically means you have 1 color less than the last 3. So let's say if you end up with just a red and a blue, you're automatically injured. If you're just left with 1 die, you're injured, right? So that's an injury. However, if the attack eliminates all dice, you have no dice to remove, that is automatically a decapitation, meaning your gladiator has no other chance but to die. While the other 2, it is up to the host to see whether he was worthy enough in the arena, or if you want to mess with the player and be unfair towards them, you can go ahead and kill them off because you don't want them to have the gladiator, or they didn't perform well at all.
Yeah, we see a lot of power here once again in the hands of the host, and why it is an important strategy to at least try to save some money to bid for the host, because let's say the host is particularly vengeful against a particular player, and or just wasn't entertained by the vicious gladiatorial match in the arena. They can just thumbs down. Poor gladiator, he doesn't live to see another day. If gladiator gets the thumbs up, of course, and then they're in for the next. And basically, and then the turn ends and it goes back up again to the first phase of the next round, and then which is back again to the upkeep. And these turns keep on going and repeating themselves up until a person reaches the highest influence on their
influence tracker, which is 12.
12 influence on the influence tracker.
So I guess at this point, now that we've gone over the rules, we've given as much detail as possible, not to make it a lengthy episode for just rules. We're gonna go over the stats basically of the design, the rules. We're gonna grade them a 1 to 5, 1 being the worst and 5 being the most favorable of the lot.
We came up with this sort of grading table because we want to remain consistent over all the times that we, do our little board game reviews, and we want to try and mention at least a little bit each sort of component that we at least like to think about when playing a game. And the first of this, as Don mentioned, is design. Now, out of 5 being the best, what would you think you would rate Spartacus, Blood and Treachery?
I would say that the board game itself, for me, would have been a 5. However, when looking at all the components, I had to give it a 4. And simply because when you kind of look at the rules in specific, the catalog of the rules, it's not as high quality as other board games that I've actually gotten my hands on. So I guess that's where it downs a bit. And also the figurines, while they're 3D printed, they're nice. They could have been somewhat better, I guess.
Okay.
Then again, I mean, they were working with a margin of 50, I think it was like 50 to 60 euro when I was purchasing it at the time. It wasn't so expensive as it is now, right?
Okay. I do agree with the 4. For me, I'd probably say that I do like the design and the feel, and a lot of these things are good quality. Perhaps some could be a little better, as you said. For me, what does it is that there is no internal kind of storage for all the components that there is. I mean, there's a lot of components with the game, dice running around, a lot of tokens and things, and I'm a bit of, let's say, a little bit of a neat freak in the sense with the board game. I like things to be nice and organized. So if with the design it has either an internal storage component that comes with it, or maybe a little better way to keep things organized within the box, then for me, we probably would have given that a 5. But as it stands, I think a 4 is pretty fair with the design as well. I mean, I love that they incorporated pictures from the show, as we mentioned.
Yeah, that's what sold the game for me. The minute I saw it and it was true to the TV show that I love so much, immediately it was a winner. Let's go down to the next one, rules. How did you feel about the rules, Ben?
I think the rules are quite straightforward. Reading through the rule book, you can understand how to play, and it does go through quite a lot of things in relation to the way rulings can work. The only thing that perhaps they could have done, and this would have definitely made it a 5, but because of this we gave it a 4, is a lot of board games include a frequently asked questions section in the back where they go over certain rulings just to clarify what they mean when they explain the rules. And for me, I find this very helpful because I have a game group, there's always that one person in almost every game group who is going to be, oh, well, did it actually say it like that in the rules? Is it written like that? And I love going back to the frequently asked questions just to double check, just to make sure that, we're playing fair, the rules are always consistent. If it had the frequently asked questions, it would have had another point, I think.
Yeah, same here. And I feel this is more true when the expansions came out, because all of a sudden they're introducing these new components, these new rulings, and they don't clarify some rules from other texts, such as, for example, Animeus has the Doctori rule, which basically, and there's no rules on the gladiators anymore. And we had an incident where basically there's this thing called the Primus, and it's a 2v2. It's only found in the expansion, and it wasn't really clear whether Animeus would nullify one gladiator of the opponent team or both, or everyone's. There was no real clarification. There is an online Reddit group that kind of goes through this, but it's really much like they say, listen, it's a house rule, you decide what's best. And unfortunately, you will find always that player on the table that tries to metagame the situation, saying, according to the grammar that's being used, then this is how it has to play out, which I don't think is fair, because the grammar that was being used at the time of the original printing did not have in mind the future coming things, and they did not fix the cards. Because I know for certain that they did replace the Crixus, the Spartacus, and the Ocules, and some other gladiator. They were like 4 different cards that got reprinted simply because of the new rules, and now we have this problem where other rules are kind of vague. It's like, what's going on?
It might be interesting to see what they do for the second edition upcoming of Spartacus. Perhaps they will remedy this, or maybe have a bit more clarifications if they've got some feedback on this point. Moving on, however, setup. Now, the setup for this game is really easy. If you have all the components, all set up nice and neatly in the box. It's just a matter of taking them out, placing the cards down, and literally starting play. Setup does not take long at all. It's a very easy game to get into, and so for that reason, I think both me and Don agree that is a well-deserved five over there. Yeah,
It's a 5.
definitely.
Self-explanatory.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to see a board game that you almost pick up and play. As long as you put the game board down and you put the appropriate tokens on it, then you're good to go. There's no lengthy setup of multiple boxes, multiple little tokens that go all over the place. With this, it's just a couple of tokens going down on the board, putting out the money, and then basically starting after dealing out the cards.
Yeah.
So moving on to mechanics. Now, the mechanics of this game are actually really awesome. One thing that I love is actually the mechanics of the arena phase. Don, what do you think?
I love the mechanics of the intrigue phase and how you have the interaction between players, directly and indirectly, mind you, because there's this sense of I'm messing with a player, I'm reaping off him. The player can respond to those if he has a reaction card or he has guards at the ready to foil that scheme. So for me, that mechanic is self-explanatory. It doesn't need more rulings to understand it. Mechanics are straightforward. I love the fact that there's a lot of implementation. Like you were saying, the gladiatorial arena, which is taking mechanics from Risk originally with the combat style. The only thing that they added to it is simply initiative, just to see who goes first. So it's not always the same routine of, oh, you go first, then I go first. There might be a case where the opponent went last, he goes first next, so it's technically gaining advantage of 2 attacks, which might change things in the arena. Mechanically, it's beautifully made, very hard to replicate. I've not seen another board game like it.
Yeah, we also can't forget the bidding mechanics. Yeah, the bidding mechanics are great. It's quite unique. We don't usually see it in a lot of other board games, the way the cards come out and people and then hide coins, everyone out offer the coins, and the one with the most obviously wins. I think that's a very cool mechanic to input.
What I like the most about the bidding mechanic in specific is it's not a mechanic on its own. It's triggered from how you play your entry cards. So whether you cash them in or you bribe someone off or you win. So it's an element of money management there, and it teaches you money management, which, by the way, and once again, my partner excels in that in every concept in her life, even in this game, which won her so many games just because she was financially wise. She's almost like, if you've seen the show, she reminds me a lot of the last Roman guy, Crassus, because he was the money maker in the show towards the end. It's like this really rich person. She reminds me so much of him.
So yeah, putting all of these together, all of the way these mechanics integrate so well with each other and blend in and make the game so enjoyable, we think that we're gonna give this 5 out of 5 full points for this. Mechanics are great, so smooth, and it just makes the game so enjoyable to play.
And next on we have components.
So in components, we're talking about the things that make up the board game. So you've got the game board, you've got the player boards, you've got perhaps the little tokens and the cards. All these components make for a great game to play. We mentioned in the design that they are designed quite well. Individually components, they're good to keep track of the game. So the player board has a lot of information that can help you, keep track. You've got your intrigue tracker on it. You've got, special house rules and things like that. The gladiators, the miniatures are really fun to watch on the game board. The game board is also made quite well. I'm not sure how all of them stand up to a lot of play. Would you say you've had the game for quite a long time now, Don?
Mm-hmm.
It is actually a really, really often played board game of yours.
Yeah,
how does the durability of the components stand up?
The wear and tear of it, you can start seeing it in the cards, you can see it in the player boards, so much so that I am so scared that one of the components is going to go bust at some point very soon, that I actually printed out a playmat of the actual board. At this point, I do plan to actually print out the characters as well as a small playmat for that reason, because of the wear and tear, to be honest with you. However, I think for the most part, if I had thought of the sleeving of the cards beforehand, I don't think they would be in the condition they are now. The only component really, I think they could have went a bit extra with, at least in a special edition or something, getting the coins to be either plastic or actually like metallized, something of the sort, just to give it that bit of physical feel rather than the cardboard ones, simply because they're the most exchanged items. They're mostly in your hands through sweat and all this. They're more bound to get the wear and tear kind of, you start seeing the printing come off. Some of them, if you don't have them in the right conditions, or someone had food in their hands and grabbed it, you start seeing mold grow on them. It's like, what the hell was that? It's this kind of stuff that I don't think is taught throughout when designing the components. However, that being said, we give the components a nice 4 for that.
Yes, it was worth a 4. Perhaps maybe as done, as you said, those little extra things here and there, just with, handling. I do honestly think that if the coins were, perhaps maybe a bit more weighty, a bit more durable, like either a sort of metallic or maybe a bit more plastic, things like that, or heavy at least, plastic, it would add not even just more durability for those components, but also imagine bidding and then hearing the clanking of the coins falling down on the table. Oh, that immersion would be so good.
Technically, what I could do is just end up, hoarding a bunch of 1-cent coins and just putting them in there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, actually, honestly, you could really do that, and it would add a whole level of immersion to the game.
And a whole lot of weight to it too.
Definitely a whole lot.
Do you know
of
what
weight.
another component I really wish I could see, and I think they're going to implement it in the next edition? The tracker for your influence. The tracker for your influence is just a small, tiny cardboard box that goes on top, and the amount of times that people end up either tipping the board over, someone knocks something off while rolling dice, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, what influence was I? Oh, I think I was, 9 when they were actually 7. So I would put on a clipper.
Yeah, perhaps a plastic clipper, like we've seen in other board games, would definitely help. Because excitement runs high in this game, so
standing up on chairs,
standing up on chairs, looking over, towering down over the arena, the host has power, that kind of thing.
Bringing one of your ornament weapons off the wall and coming down with it is like, whoa.
Oh yeah, bringing down like an axe or a mace or a sword, literally, it's gone to places where people have actually come wearing togas to play this game, like literally like Roman style. This is us going to the arena. People really get into it.
I actually want to edit that footage of us in clothing. We all dressed as Romans and we played the Roman parts, and we did have weapons on the table. I think we had a flail and we had a wooden sword.
Yes, the flail.
I really want to edit that and just post it on my personal YouTube channel just to see the reaction of people.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the next point coming on, we hinted at it just now, just a little bit, is sort of replayability. Now, with the idea that this game is really, people going to the arena, gladiators fighting, there isn't really that much difference that comes into the game each and every time from time to time that you play. Now, people do, from our experience, really get immersed into the game and try to add that flair of difference. Some people come wearing togas, Roman clothing. Some people come with actual, props to simulate the fighting. But in and of itself, the game is a little bit repetitive, I find myself.
The thing is, it's not replayable for flavor. It's replayable because people love it. This is the same as when I was a kid and we had Cluedo come into the house as a board game, a family board game. We loved it so much we played it almost every single weekend. And the same with Spartacus. It came to the point where we were playing it like almost every other weekend. And that doesn't increase the chances of the replayability, because you might have players, as much as they like it, say, listen, there's nothing new to it. And I guess this is where the expansions came in and increased things for you, and that made the game more fun to play it again. But I think after I was 22 at the time. I'm currently 30, so that's a good 8 years of that board game on my shelf, being on and off, being played. And I think the last 3 to 4 years, apart from the fact that I had a kid, I think it actually stayed on the shelf longer just because we got burnt out playing it so much.
I feel that if you play the game once or twice, it kind of gives you enough time to figure out the winning strategy, and that winning strategy doesn't change. You can try almost any other thing, but it really boils down to bring up a lot of slaves, get that good gladiator, use a lot of money, always bid for the host, and it's literally money management in this game. And if you learn how to manage the money and you're always got money in your pocket to bid and outbid other people, then you're going to win. It's almost always like that. Hands down, we can see, Don mentioned...
I actually, hold on, because you're bringing me to it. I actually came up with a sheet of paper. I printed a bunch of these. And basically, I have every single Dominus, because that's what they're called in the game. Each character is a Dominus. Each Dominus, how many points, influence points they got during that game, and how the winner managed to get to the 12th influence. Most of the time, actually, right, it is either through Glabber, for example, he got a lot of the thing of the not gladiators, he discards the guards to gain influence. So he ends up hoarding them, And then I have my nephew has a winning streak so far of winning the game through the arena. Which is, I think, the way the game was supposed to be designed, and he managed to find a way how to exploit it to get that winning condition on board. He has the obsession, and he has the highest kills of decapitation so far. The boy has made it his life mission in that board game to prove to everyone money is not the only way to win the game.
Well, I mean, there you go. His motivation was just to prove that money is not the way to win the game. So if he's trying to prove that way, then, there must be something with the money.
He built a strategy around it.
Yeah, definitely. So for all of these reasons combined, for the fact that replayability is there for just, really game-wise rather than flavor-wise, I think we would really love to give this game a lot more, because it is, one of our favorite games. It's played quite often, but just because of the repetitive nature of it, I think we're going to give this a 2.
Yeah, replayability gets a 2 from us.
Yes. We would like to see a lot more flavor in this, in the sense of replayability. So
I want to see another similar board game come out for a different theme. Be it Viking, being, I don't know, anything that could replicate this. And then we go to our last section, which is player interaction. Now, player interaction runs very high, emotions runs very high in this game. We've already said this. We gave it a 4. I guess we can just go saying that off the bat. And my personal reason why I gave it a 4 is simply because while the interaction is high, the gladiator phase ends up being a bit of a backseat for the players that are not participating. While I guess there's the element of you wanting to see what's going on because you have money invested in it. If you're that player that doesn't have any money, it's not going well for you in the game, you're sitting back, fumbling your thumbs, and you don't know. You're not interacting in that moment.
And adding on to this, actually, if the host gets... they're very good at money management and almost every time outbid everyone every turn to be the host. They're always doing something. They also can decide to choose practically the same people going along to enter the arena. And if you've got a little bit of a wise and, smart player on your table, kind of like your nephew, that is always going to try and worm his way into the arena, then players during the arena phase, as you said, are going to be left just watching, twiddling their thumbs. Because of this downside, I will agree that it does not deserve a 5. I would give it a 4. I would give it a 4 and not a 3, because there are the bidding phases, there are the big bidding mechanics. All the players get to bid and interact with each other off of that. Even when playing the cards, you're interacting with other players. So there are lots of phases within the game that allow for more player interaction. And because of that, I would give it a 4 and not a 3.
Yeah, I guess the arena phase gives a bit of a break for a lot of interaction in a way. Something else about the interaction, however, the only downside that I also find in the player interaction, if someone plays nasty in a way, and by nasty I mean he's deliberately going after players who are not doing well and just keep, kicking the guy when he's down. And I've seen this happen sometimes. I've ended up in that position when I've done it to people. It really ends up putting a bad taste in people's mouths, and that is a possibility there in the player interaction. And nothing in the game safeguards that, because they want to stay true to the TV show where, as a Roman, you're down nasty to get what you want.
So we've come to the end of our episode today. We have given I believe, a really great rating. If we look at, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I think that brings it up to 4.5.
Overall, looking back at our grading for Spartacus, Blood and Treachery, overall it gets an average of 4 across all of the categories that we have listed down for this review. A 4 average just goes to show how much we think the game is a really good game. If you guys want to play Spartacus, Blood and Treachery, well, there's not really much places that our listeners can find this game, can they?
From my understanding so far, the original game, you can find it on Amazon for secondhand and all this. I believe a few shops still have the game on shelf and no one's really gone ahead and picked it. Perhaps the gory front doesn't attract people to go for it. The fact that there's a 16 or 18 plus that is put on it simply because there's quotes from the show which have certain indication of sexual slurs and insults and swear words is the only reason why it's really high graded. And by the way, they're in italics and almost faded text, which you can barely see. But I guess if any kid who knows how to read picks that up and he starts getting a bit of few ideas of like what the hell's going on here, I can understand. They could have done without that, by the way. That's another thing I would have put in the design for a 4.
Perhaps we can say that we are looking forward to the second edition to see what they're going to come out, to see what is different. Perhaps Don might not, because
you should get it.
I should get it. Yes, I definitely should get it.
You should get a copy.
Yes.
I will hold the original and you will hold the second edition.
Yes, and then we'll pitch them together and we will come back with another review of the second edition for Spartacus, Blood and Treachery in the future. But until then, everybody, thank you so much for listening and joining in. As always, we love doing these episodes for you guys, and we love talking about games and everything game related. So guys, thanks once again for tuning into this episode. It's been great. We'll catch you again next week with another board game review. This has been PlayUp and Chat.